Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed. So today, inshallah, I'll try to go quickly over the rest of the chapter of Sadaq. Do you remember where we stopped? We were talking about the halving of the Sadaq. When, after divorce, after the contract and before the consummation, if divorce takes place, what happens? She gets half of the sadaq. The bride gets half of the bride gets half of the sadaq. And if she received it, then she returns one half of it to him. But then we were talking about the case where she is the one who initiated the separation, not him. Or caused the separation, not him. In this case, does she get half? No. Well, if she asks him for khula and he gives her khula, isn't that an initiation on her part? Yes. Does she get half? Yes. Because at the end of the day, he gave her that khula. But there are certain cases where she initiates it and it is all her doing. And the Sheikh said, rahimahullah ta'ala, Imam ibn Qudamah in his book al-Umdat, said, فصل وكل فرقة جاءت من المرأة قبل الدخول كإسلامها أو ارتدادها أو إرضاعها أو فسخ لعيبها أو فسخها لعيبه وإعساره أو عتقها يسقط به مهرها. Subsection, the sadaq is dropped in all cases where separation is caused by the woman before consummation, such as her conversion to Islam, apostasy, breastfeeding, or defect. The same applies if annulment was caused by a defect of the husband's, because she's the one who demanded the annulment, his lack of means, or her emancipation. All of these things, she is the one who caused it. She does not get to keep one half. Then he said, وإن جاءت من الزوج كطلاقه وخلعه تنصف به مهرها بينهما إلا أن يعفو لها عن نصفه أو تعفو هي عن حقها وهي رشيدة فيكمل الصداق للآخر أو فيكمل الصداق للآخر. If the separation before consummation comes from the side of the husband, as when he divorces her or grants her khula, then her deserved dower or sadaq is half, unless he exempts her by paying the full bridal dower, or she exempts him by foregoing the deserved half, assuming that she is Rashida or mature. If she's not Rashida, she cannot exempt him. If she is not Rashida, she cannot exempt him. Only a Rashida can give up her right. A child cannot give up her right. He should not give up her right because it's not his. Or at least according to the Hanbali madhab, إلا أن يعفون أو يعفو الذي بيده عقدة النكاح is not the wali. الذي بيده عقدة النكاح is the husband. So وإن طلقتموهن من قبل أن تمسوهن وقد فرضتم لهن فريضة فنصف ما فرضتم وإن طلقتموهن من قبل أن تمسوهن وقد فرضتم لهن فريضة فنصف ما فرضتم إلا أن يعفون أو يعفو الذي بيده عقدة النكاح وأن تعفوا أقرب للتقوى ولا تنسوا الفضل بينكم إن الله بما تعملون بصير. So إلا أن يعفون, except if they basically forego their half. Yafun, to pardon, to forgive, meaning to exempt, to give up your right, or exempt the other party of their obligation. إلا أن يعفون أو يعفو الذي بيده عقدة النكاح, or the person who has basically who's in control of the marriage, which is the husband. If he forgives, pardons, exempts, gives up his right. This means وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ, and don't forget graciousness in dealings among you, because this particular relationship is not based on justice. Justice is the very basic foundation for sure, but it mainly runs on graciousness, not justice. We can say it is based on justice, but it mainly runs on graciousness. It cannot run on justice. So then, if the separation comes from the side of the husband, then he will give her half, or if he is gracious, he will give her the whole sadaq, or if she is gracious, she will give up her half. And the encouragement here is for people basically to demonstrate graciousness. So this is where we stopped last time. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah said, وَإِنْ جَاءَتْ مِنْ أَجْنَبِيٍّ فَعَلَى الزَّوْجِ نِصْفُ الْمَهْرِ يَرْجِعُ بِهِ عَلَى مَنْ فَرَّقَ بَيْنَهُمَا. If the separation is caused by a third party, the husband will owe half of the sadaq, but he can claim it from the party that separated them. How can the separation be caused by a third party? Let us say he is married to an infant, and his sister picks her up and breastfeeds her 5 times according to the Hanbalis, but breastfeeds her according to the Malikis and Hanafis. But let's say she did breastfeed her 5 times according to the Hanbalis. What does that make her? His niece. Can he consummate the marriage with her? No. Did she ruin it for him? Yes. Now, is that the infant's fault? No. Is she deserving of half of her dowry? Yes. He'll have to pay it. And then he can go back and sue his sister for, the half of the dowry. So يرجع به على من فرق بينهما, but he can claim it from the party that separated them. Well, he can demand that his sister kindly give him and then if she refuses, then he can take her to court. Then the Shaykh said, وَمَتَى تَنَصَّفَ الْمَهْرُ وَكَانَ مُعَيَّنًا بَاقِيًا لَمْ تَتَغَيَّرْ قِيمَتُهُ صَارَ بَيْنَهُمَا نَصْفَيْنِ. If the sadaq is half, and it is a particular item whose value does not change, it will be divided between them. It will be divided between them. So let us say, now we said that the contract took place and consummation has not taken place yet. In this period, divorce happened here. She gets 1/2. Now we will talk about, because we'll talk about what happens with that sadaq, if it goes up or it goes down. The sadaq increases, decreases. Now, if he gave her a particular item, a piece of furniture, for instance, then he is entitled to half of it at the end, or half of its value. So that is if it doesn't change, the value does not change. وإن زاد زيادة منفصلة كغنم ولدت فالزيادة لها والغنم بينهما، وإن زاد زيادة متصلة مثل إن سمنت الغنم خيرت بين دفع نصفها زائدا وبين دفع نصف قيمتها يوم العقد. If the sadaq increases and that increase is separate from the original item, such as when a sheep gives birth to a baby lamb, the increase belongs to her. The original sheep will be divided between them. If the increase is attached to the original item, such as when a sheep gains weight, she can choose to return half of the larger sheep or to return half of the sheep's value as of the day of the contract. So let us finish what he will have to say about these scenarios where the value of the dowry goes up or down, and then discuss it in detail. He then says, وَإِن نَقَصَتْ فَلَهَا, it should be فَلَهُ. It's, in this particular manuscript, the في تصحيف, there is an error, typo. وإن نقصت فله الخيار بين أخذ نصفه ناقصا وبين أخذ نصف قيمته يوم العقد وإن تلفت فله نصف قيمتها يوم العقد. If it decreases, he can choose to take half of the diminished property or half of its value as of the day of the contract. If the item has been damaged, he is entitled to half of its value as of the day of the marriage contract. As of the day of the marriage contract. Okay, so sadaq. Sadaq will be halved. The principle here is that from the day of the contract, who is the owner of the entire sadaq, not half, who's the owner of the entire sadaq? The bride. She's deserving from the time of the contract. She is the owner. So there are many scenarios here. One scenario, we have fungibles and non-fungibles. Fungibles means what? Substitutable. Fungibles are like what? We have something called mithliyat and qimiyat. Mithli is when the like of which is universally available. It's just available. Qimi, you can't find its exact like, but it can be valued as a qima, a value that we know. So these are two different things in fiqh. Mithliyat comes from mithl, means substitutable, fungibles, the like of which can be found. Qimiyat means things that have a value, but the like of which are not, found. The likes of which are not found. Mithliyat are like what? Dollars. Does it matter, does it matter the dollars in my wallet now and dollars in your wallet? Is there a difference? Are they exactly the same? They are. Also, mithliyat are like 2 tons of a particular or 2 pounds of a particular grain or seed or something described in detail. So when you say 2 pounds or 2 tons, your sadaq is 2 tons of flour than wheat, whatever it is, then that is mithliyat or qimiyat. That's mithliyat, fungibles, the exact like of which can be found. So we have different rules when it comes to mithliyat and qimiyat. For the mithliyat, the fungibles, whoever has the money, he just has that particular value. If it will be halved, then half of that money. If you have that money, you could do whatever you want with it because the like of which is easily found. It's not a problem. So if he gives her $1,000, for instance, as sadaq, $1,000 as sadaq, and he does not give her the money, he loses the money. What does he have to give her if divorce happens? 500. Not a problem, not an issue. 2 tons, 1 ton, etc. If she takes the money and she loses the money, and the divorce takes place afterwards, before consummation, what does she give him back? 500. Fungibles, easy, no problem here. Whoever has that money, and if he invests it and it grows, the growth is his, the person who has it, even if it is the husband. How come? The money belongs to her. But these are fungibles. What he promised to her is $1,000. Any $1,000 would do. Any $1,000 would do. But when it comes to non-fungibles, it's a different story. Non-fungibles are like what? A particular piece of furniture, a particular camel, cow, etc. These are non-fungibles because the exact like of which may not be found. The exact like of which may not be found. Let us say it's a cow. So she gets the cow. Okay, one scenario is he does not give her the cow. He keeps the cow. There are 2 scenarios here. Did she demand it? let's say that okay. So let us talk about increase and decrease. Let's divide it this way: increase and decrease. How can the cow increase? No, gives birth, or yes, wait, or gives birth. So the separable and inseparable, separable, inseparable. The separable increase is gives birth. The inseparable is gains weight. How can a cow decrease in value? Loses weight, right? Or becomes blind, or whatever it is. Something happens to it. Okay. Now, we have two scenarios here. In the case of increase, what happens? Who owns this cow? The bride. If he had the cow with him, who still owns the profit? The bride, not him. Because this is different from fungibles. Fungibles, he does not owe her this cow. He owes her $1,000. He can bring the $1,000 from wherever. That's what he owes her. But when it comes to the muayyan, the particular cow, if he still has the cow, she makes the profit. Okay, she makes the profit. If she has the cow, obviously she'll make the profit. Now, if the profit is separable and divorce takes place, what happens? Well, that's fine. She keeps the separable profit. She keeps the babies. She keeps the babies. What happens? Yeah.
Just any cow, or it has to be a specific cow?
A specific cow. Yeah. So if the gain is not separable, the cow gained weight. What happens? If the cow gained weight and she will have to return half, huh? She has the option to give him half of the value of the cow at the time of the contract, or half of the cow now, after the increase. She can choose.
Why have the cow now?
She has the choice. I mean, if she's generous, she's nice. And she wanted to give him half of the cow, like half of the larger cow. Now, the cow, after it gained weight.
She only owes half of the cow.
But if she has the choice, then she's bound to give him the least is half of the value of the cow at the time of the contract. Any profit after that is hers. So she is bound to give him at least half of the value of the cow at the time of the contract. Any profit is hers. But if she wanted to give him half of the cow now, which is the larger cow, the better cow, the fatter cow, then that's nice. Up to her. But what if the cow decreased? What if the cow, became blind, lost weight, emaciated, whatever? What happens? Who has the cow? She or he? She has the cow? Okay. If she has the cow, then he has the right to demand half. He can either take half of the cow now, the emaciated cow, or has the right to demand half of the value of the cow at the time of the contract. Okay? Now, what if he has the cow and the cow lost weight? He still has the cow.
After contract.
He did not submit the cow to her. He still has the cow after the contract, and now the cow lost weight.
He has to give her the right one, the good one, another one, something.
No, there are two scenarios. Did she demand to take the cow, or she did not demand to take the cow? If she demanded the cow and he procrastinated, he is liable for the cow, for the decrease. he's liable for the decrease. If she did not demand to take it, and the cow lost weight, who's liable?
She's not liable.
She is, in the sense that it's her loss, unless, because what is التكييف الفقهي للبقرة في هذا الوقت? What is basically the fiqhi description of the baqarah? It is what? It is amana ولا عارية? It is amana, it's a trust. She left it with him, willingly left it with him. It means that the cow now is a trust with him. When does he become liable for the loss? Negligence or transgression. If tafrit أو تعدي, tafrit or تعدي. If he did not commit an act of negligence or transgression, tafrit or تعدي, she loses. It's her loss, not his loss. If he committed tafrit or ta'addi, it is his loss. Okay, so that is basically a very quick summary of when the dowry increases or decreases. Well, why do the scholars have to get into the nitty-gritty of stuff like this? Why do we have to get in? Because they had people come to them with these problems. They had to say, this is what you do when something happens of this nature, so that they can basically do the good work of reconciliation, mediation, arbitration, or judging between people. Then he said, وَمَتَى دَخَلَ بِهَا اسْتَقَرَّ الْمَهْرُ وَلَمْ يَسْقُطْ بِشَيْءٍ. Once he consummates the marriage with her, the mahr or sadaq becomes entirely binding on him, and it will never be annulled. It will never be annulled. Once the consummation happens, the woman will take it. There is one case only where the woman would lose the mahr. If she was the only deceiver, if she deceived him, tricked him into the marriage, and she is the only deceiver, not her wali, she is the one responsible. She is the one who hid from him a defect that warrants annulment of the contract. She hid from him a defect that warrants the annulment of the contract. Who hid it? She did. Actively, not actively hid a defect that warrants an annulment of the contract. What if the wali is the one who did? The wali is responsible. The man pays the woman, and he goes back and takes it from the wali. Okay, but aside from this scenario, whenever consummation happens, the entire mahr becomes binding at once and is never annulled. وَإِنْ خَلَى بِهَا, is it only consummation in the sense of consummation, having intercourse? No. وإن خلا بها بعد العقد وقال لم أطأها وصدقته استقر المهر ووجبت العدة. If he has been in seclusion with her after the contract, but he says, I did not have intercourse with her, and she confirms his statement, the mahr is still binding on him, and the waiting period is binding on her. Okay. Now, they both agreed that, that they did not consummate in the sense of consummation. They just had khalwa shar'iyya. So, a legal seclusion, khalwa shar'iyya, legal seclusion. But after this khalwa shar'iyya, he said, I did not touch her. Huh? Khalwa shar'iyya. What is this? No. They are together in one room without any adult, sane adult, in their company. So, or a mumayyiz child, a discerning child, according to the Hanbalis. So anyway, but anyway, this is khalwa shar'iyya. Khalwa shar'iyya in the Hanbali madhab makes everything binding just like consummation. Even if they both say nothing happened. She agrees. She gets half of the mahr because it's khalwa. Who said that in addition to the Hanbalis? The Hanafis. Who said that also? Shafi'i fil Qadim, in his old madhab. But there is another report from the Hanbalis, which is the weaker report, plus the Maliki, plus the Shafi'i in al-Jadid, the authorized report of al-Shafi'i. They all say if she agrees with him that consummation did not take place, then he's not bound. He's not bound to pay half of the mahr. She says, why are they saying that he must pay half of the mahr? Because they say that the khalwa. Okay, so what is the proof? What is their proof? Their proof is the Quran. The proof of the Malikis and Shafi'is and that unauthorized position in the Hanbali madhab is the Quran. وَإِن طَلَّقْتُمُوهُنَّ مِن قَبْلِ أَن تَمَسُّوهُنَّ. And if you divorced him before you touch him, he did not touch her. So what do they say here that the khalwa would make it binding? They say that this is the fatwa of al-Khulafa al-Arba'a, the four khalifas. Daraqutni reported from Zurara ibn Awfa, from the four khalifas, that whenever seclusion takes place, it counts like consummation. Making the whole mahr binding and making the waiting period binding on her. Okay. So these are the different proofs here. They say rationally, when they try to give like a rational proof for this, that she may just agree with him because she's too shy to say that consummation took place. She may just agree with him because she is too shy to say, no, consummation did take place. So they will give her half of the dowry. Now, when it comes to the waiting period, the Malikis came and sided with the Hanafis and Hanbalis, and they said the waiting period is binding on her, even if they both deny intimacy. The Shafi'is are still saying, no, it's not binding if they both denied intimacy. Okay. What else would make the mahr all binding according to the Hanbalis? Kissing in public, lustful touching, just lustful touching, all binding. Kissing in public makes it binding. Khalwa, so consummation, khalwa, lustful touching, kissing in public, all make it binding in the Hanbali madhab, the mahr. Okay. Then the Sheikh said, وَإِنْ اخْتَلَفَ الزَّوْجَانِ فِي الصَّدَاقِ أَوْ قَدْرِهِ فَالْقَوْلُ قَوْلُ مَنْ يَدَّعِي مَهْرَ الْمِثْلِ مِنْهُمَا مَعَ يَمِينِهِ. If the two spouses disagree about the sadaq or its exact amount, the accepted claim will be that of the one who claims an amount comparable to the customary mahr for her equals, along with his or her oath. So they disagree about the mahr, and she says, no, actually, أنت فرضت لي, you specified, designated $1,000. He says $500. Who do we believe now? Okay, we believe the one who's closer to the mahr of her equals. So if it is in the estimation of the judge that her equals get $1,000, then we will believe her. If it is in the estimation of the judge that her equals get $500, we will believe him. Keep in mind that in the authorized view in the Hanbali madhab, we will believe him, not her. Why? Because whenever two people make a claim, you take the lower and you ask the one who's making the higher claim to prove his higher claim. So she said 500, he says 500, she says 1,000. Then for sure, 500, they agreed on the 500. What about the difference? She is claiming that in addition, then she will need to prove her claim. Okay, then moving on to Bab Ishrat al-Nisa, or the chapter on the proper treatment of women or their good companionship. الشيخ رحمه الله said وعلى كل واحد من الزوجين معاشرة صاحبه بالمعروف. Each one of the two, على كل واحد من الزوجين مصاحبة صاحبه بالمعروف. وأداء حقه الواجب إليه من غير مطل ولا إظهار الكراهة لبذله. Each of the two spouses must accompany their partner in life with fairness and kindness. Each one of them must fulfill the rights of the other without procrastinating or showing resentment. So this chapter is about the rights and obligations between the wife and husband. It will be mostly talking about the rights of the wife, but it does briefly address the rights of the husband. But it started by saying, putting them on equal foot, and saying they both, the two spouses, need to accompany each other with fairness and kindness. Now, the idea of ma'ruf here is a very beautiful idea, because ma'ruf is translated as sensible, reasonable, good, kind, but it comes from the root which is arafa ya'rif, to know. That which is known to be sensible, making room for what? Difference in cultures and customs, making room for some differences, as long as those differences are not in defiance of what? The spirit or the letter of Sharia. If they are in defiance, they're dismissed. Urf is secondary source of legislation, not primary source of legislation. What is the difference? It's only applicable when it is not in conflict with the primary sources. When it's not in conflict with the primary sources. Okay? So بالمعروف وعاشرهن بالمعروف. The concept here, the philosophical foundation here is وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. Allah says وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ فَإِنْ كَرِهْتُمُوهُنَّ فَعَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَيَجْعَلَ اللَّهُ فِيهِ خَيْرًا كَثِيرًا. Live with them in kindness, and if you dislike them, you may dislike something, and Allah makes therein much good. So that is an encouragement for people to basically to stand the course, and to keep the marriage and to continue the relationship and to avoid divorce. The principle here is وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ. Of course, nowadays, if you want to be politically correct, you will delete this part from the ayah. But we certainly don't do that. But what does it say here? وَلَهُنَّ, to them, مثل are rights equal, like الذي عليهن, that which is upon them, the obligations upon them, بالمعروف, within reason. To them are rights equal to the obligations upon them within reason. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ, and men have a degree over them. Men have a degree over them. What is this degree? What is this daraja? It is al-Qudamah, which means what? Position of leadership. That Qudamah, or the position of leadership, is actually a position of responsibility and accountability. But again, whenever somebody is responsible, they get also the corresponding rights. Because it's not just like you're responsible, but you don't get any privileges. It is only a burden without the corresponding rights. It is only an obligation without the corresponding rights. If he will be responsible for the safety and the financial stability of the family, and the sole one to blame in case, of the family goes through hardship, then he will be the one to have that right to make the decisions that are conducive to the safety and the well-being of the family. وَلِلرِّجَالِ عَلَيْهِنَّ دَرَجَةٌ بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, because of what Allah had given them favor them with, and because of their spending. Two things, not one. Okay. So that is basically the concept. But the idea here is that the default is what? The default is the balance between rights and obligations, and the equitable distribution of the burden, equitable distribution of everything, obligations, right. It has to be equitable, and there has to be balance between the rights and obligation. وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. To the extent that, how did the Sahaba understand this? Abdullah ibn Abbas would say, for instance, إن يحب أن أتزين المرأة كما أحب أن تتجمل لي لأن الله عز وجل يقول ولهن مثل الذي عليهن بالمعروف. I like to make myself handsome or beautify myself for my wife like I want her to beautify herself for me, because Allah says وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوف. So the Sahaba really took it to heart, this ayah, this concept, which was completely foreign. Foreign not only in Arabia, but foreign in the world at that time. Don't tell me, we can talk about, what the Bible says about women. We can talk about the Romans, we can talk about the Persians. It was foreign, a foreign concept to the world at the time. This is basically, in like briefly, the philosophical foundation of how this relationship should be addressed. Then the Sheikh said, now he will start with the rights of the husband. He says, وَحَقُّهُ عَلَيْهَا تَسْلِيمُ نَفْسِهَا إِلَيْهِ وَطَاعَتُهُ فِي الْإِسْتِمْتَاعِ مَتَى أَرَادَ أو مَتَى أَرَادَهُ مَا لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهَا عُذْرٌ. He said, it is his right for her to let him enjoy lovemaking with her whenever he wishes, and to obey him in this regard unless she has an excuse. Okay. Here is one of the things that are important, because this will look like discriminating between men and women, because the Prophet ﷺ used very forceful and very assertive, forceful, powerful statements to warn women against denying their husbands the right to intimacy. Why? Because Ash-Shari', the legislator, God, the creator, knows us very well. And he knows that when women do this, this is a catalyst of demise of the relationship, breakdown, disintegration of the relationship, and complete demise of the relationship. And he wants not only to point out to us the danger, but he wants to grab us, shake us, and tell us, don't do it. This is evil. This will result in corruption. So when the Prophet ﷺ says, إِذَا دَعَ الرَّجُلُ امْرَأَتَهُ إِلَى فِرَاشِهِ فَأَبَتْ فَبَاتَ غَضْبَانَ عَلَيْهَا بَاتَتْ تَلْعَنُهَا الْمَلَائِكَةُ حَتَّى تُصْبِحَ. This is authentically reported from the Prophet ﷺ. When a man invites his wife to his bed, meaning to intimacy, and she denies him the right, and he goes to bed angry with her, the angels will curse her until the morning. Well, he didn't say the same thing about the man. Why did he not? We'll come back to it. But why did he say this? Why did he use the forceful language? Because Allah knows that not only that he will be upset, but this may result in the disintegration of the family. And for men with weak religious commitment as well, this will result in them seeking their needs, their biological needs, physiological needs, elsewhere. What does that mean? It means corruption. It means corruption will prevail. And eventually the women are the ones who will pay the heavier price of this corruption. So that is why the Prophet ﷺ used this powerful language to warn women against this attitude. Now, keep in mind that he said at the end what? مَا لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهَا عُذْرٌ. unless she has an excuse. Unless she has an excuse. The Prophet ﷺ said this, but keep in mind that our understanding of the deen, in our hermeneutical system, there are two important concepts. What are they? Intertextuality and contextuality. Intertextuality means what? That you will not understand any nas without basically istiqra of the rest of the nusus, without comprehensive consideration of the rest of the nusus, right? And you will not understand any nas in isolation from the context. Why? Not because you will limit it to the context, but the context will help you understand what is meant by the nas or the statement. So when the Prophet says this, the Prophet also said, La darar wa la dirar. There should be no harm or reciprocation of harm. So if she is extremely exhausted, sick, or psychologically incapable, her father just died like a few hours ago, and it just happened to her husband that he wants. If she's psychologically incapable, if she is truly incapable, then she may deny, because it causes her great harm. Now, you will not find that particular example in the books of the earlier scholars. They will talk about tangible harm to her. They will not talk about the psychological harm. But is that something to be considered? Yes, it is something to be considered, because it is, and there is multitudes of clues and hints that they did consider the emotional or the psychological impact or the psychological and emotional harm. If it was not in that particular scenario, but it is considered in many other scenarios, so you could extrapolate from this and apply it to this particular scenario. Like if her mother died and she just came back from the funeral, certainly any sensible husband will just, but if someone is not particularly that sensible and she denies, then many believe, I believe, and many believe that she would be justified in this case. So that is one thing that we wanted to say in this regard. And the other thing that we wanted to say is, what about the man refusing or denying? Well, the Shara did not really talk about this. Why? Just like the Shara did not say to the parents that they should treat their kids nicely and kindly. And the Shara always talks about birr al-walidain. It doesn't talk about birr al-abna. It doesn't talk that often about birr al-abna. Certainly there are indications that you should be kind to your kids, but where is that? We found like a plethora of nusus that talk about birr al-walidain, and where is birr al-abna? Because there is no need to make that emphasis. And why is it that there is no need to make that emphasis? Because biologically, conventionally and traditionally, it has been known that men have a higher sex drive. Some of the science proves this nowadays, but the science nowadays also is not particularly impartial, and everybody in science knows that the science is not particularly that impartial. But there are some indications, and let's not quote science, because when you start to cite it, then you get into like a conundrum. But traditionally, it has been known that men have a higher sex drive. Therefore, they seek intimacy more than their wives. Particularly after a certain age, they continue to seek intimacy at a more frequent rate than their wives. Therefore, their wives were told that they should not deny them that right to intimacy. But should a man also fulfill the needs of his wife? Yes, absolutely. A man should fulfill the needs of his wife and should not deprive her of her needs. And when the scholars, as he will come and say later, that he is bound to have intimacy with her once every 4 months, I honestly don't believe in this, and many scholars don't believe that it is basically based on her needs. He is required to fulfill her needs. But there is one factor that we have to also be cognizant of, which is that men don't always have the capacity to have intercourse, to fulfill the needs to intimacy, his wife's needs to intimacy without intercourse. Yes, he will always have the capacity. But in terms of intercourse per se, they may not always have that capacity or that ability. So that was the first part, which is the right to intimacy. He did not really mention any other rights. He did not mention any other rights of the husband except the right to intimacy. And he just moved on to basically addressing the rights of the wife. Does the husband have any other rights in addition to the right to intimacy? Yes, I think he should have some other rights. He did not mention here because it's an abbreviated book, but all of the mutawalat and all of the sort of the larger books in the Hanbali madhab and the other madhab, they do mention other rights. What are the other rights? By agreement, a woman has to obey her husband, not only when it comes to intimacy, but also when it comes to any demands by the husband that are within reason, bil ma'ruf. What do we mean by demands that are within reason? We mean that the demand, and certainly the reward for this is great for women. صلت المرأة خمسها وصامت شهرها وأطاعت زوجها. If a woman, prays the 5 prayers and makes the Ramadan fasting and obeys her husband, she will be called from all the doors or all the gates of the heavens, just like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq would be called from all the gates of the heavens. She will get the darajah of Siddiqiyya just because of these basic things. Because it is a great deal, because she is a full-blown adult. It is not easy to basically to have an authority over you when you are a full-blown adult. And because it takes a lot of fortitude and a lot of religious commitment, she will be given that enormous reward. And that's why the husband should also be aware of the difficulty of this matter. But when we say that ta'a bil ma'ruf, the Prophet ﷺ said, La ta'ata fi ma'asiyatillah, innama ta'atu fil ma'ruf. This was reported by Ali radiallahu anhu from the Prophet ﷺ. There is no ta'a in disobedience, at the expense of disobeying Allah. إنما الطاعة في المعروف. Ta'a is only in that which is ma'ruf, that which is good, that which is sensible, reasonable. What is good, sensible, reasonable? Some people say if he commands her to do anything that is not a ma'asiyah, then she is bound to obey him. Is that true? No, it's not. Because ma'asiyah, first of all, it should not be a ma'asiyah. It should not sinful. That is one. But there are 3 basic words that I want you to remember, and we will validate all of them. It has to be sensible, it has to be purposeful, it has to be harmless. Harmless to her. Sensible and purposeful. I'll give you examples. Let's start with purposeful. If he demanded her to do something, I want you basically to anything.
Stand on one foot.
No, stand on one foot, it will not be even sensible. It's not purposeful. Yes, it is, but it is not even sensible, so I'm keeping it for sensible. But purposeful. Like Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, for instance, he said that if a man demanded his son to follow his madhab, he doesn't have to obey him. لأن هذا حيث لا غرض فيه صحيح مجرد حمق. Because that is utter foolishness when there is no purpose in it. That is huge. That's a huge statement by a very madhabi scholar. Madhab to them was a big thing. So if your son decided to take up a madhab that is not yours, he is saying that it would be foolishness of you to demand your son to take your madhab to basically, which meant a lot for them, keep in mind. But he said it's still foolish unless you have a good purpose. It's purposeful, meaning, son, there is no one here that can teach you Shafi'i madhab. You're going to be lost. Then he needs to obey you. But if it is merely because of what you want, no, that's purposeless. And he doesn't have to obey him. He can pick up whichever madhab he wants. So purposeful is one. Sensible is another one. Sensible is another one. It has to make sense. It has to make sense. It has to make sense that stand on one foot, stand facing the wall. It doesn't make sense. Bil-ma'ruf, within reason. If you break, the majority of sensible people will say that that doesn't make sense. Why do you want her to stand facing the wall or stand on one foot? So sensible, but sensible is not basically a matter of subjective judgment also, because if you say sensible and she will judge what is sensible, then then obedience is meaningless completely. Sensible, the majority of people will consider the same. Harmless. So Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah says that ta'ah, people don't need to listen to their parents إلا إذا كان إلا فيما فيه نفع لهما ولا ضرر عليه. نفع لهما ولا ضرر عليه. He will listen to their parents if they have some interest in the command and there is no harm against them. They have some interest in the command, meaning purposeful. There is no harm on him, meaning harmless, because Allah said, "La darar wa la dirar," and certainly sin. We don't need to elaborate further on this. Taqiyuddin al-Subki reports from Tarsusi al-Maliki that he said, if they command him to not pray the Sunnah one day or sometimes, he should comply. But if they always command him to not pray the Sunnah, he does not need to listen to them, لأن في ذلك إماتة للشرع, because that compromises their religious commitment. So it has to be good, not counter to the Sunnah. Not counter to the Sunnah. So not only that it is not sinful, but it does not also counter the Sunnah. It does not also, yes?
Can you just expound a little bit about the subjectivity of applying the no harm principle?
The subjectivity.
Sensible, yeah.
Well, the harmless thing, what could be determined as harm is also measured by the majority of sensible people will determine that this is harm, because that harm thing is also subjective. The harm that they mean is the thing that would be called haraj or mashaqqa, the thing that will, because everything, there is a little bit of mashaqqa in everything, If I tell you, if your father tells you to get out of bed, you may say, it's mashaqqa, it's just too hard and really can't get out of bed. It is cold, it is just so inconvenient, and I don't need to listen. Well, that certainly does not qualify as harm. The harm is like the haraj and the mashaqqa they talk about that will absolve you of religious obligations. And at the end of the day, there is some degree of subjectivity, and whenever there is some degree of subjectivity, we'll have to refer to what? The majority of sensible people, the judgment of the majority of sensible people. There is one thing that I wanted to say at the end and quickly, because we need to stop, because there will be a class, an important class about dhikr, an important Maghrib class about dhikr. One thing that we need to quickly go over, which is, does the man have the right to be served by his wife? And so we're going to be done with the rights of the husband, and then next time, inshallah, we'll go over the rights of the wife. But does the man have the right to being served? Okay, so basically the contract of marriage does not include that right. And we have to agree on it. The contract of marriage does not include that right. So that is why the Hanbalis, Hanafis, Malikis, and Shafi'is, they say, and even Zahiris, they say no, she doesn't need to serve him, that's not part of the contract. But again, you know, the Ibn Habib al-Maliki, and that's why you find it a lot in the Maliki books, he reports that Ali and Fatima, the Prophet divided the work between them. He gave him the work outside, he gave her the work inside. And that is how division of, basically, that's the division of burden. It just doesn't make sense that he has to basically provide and then come back to do the housework, and she just watches him. So you will find people like al-Juzajani and Abu Thawr and Ibn al-Arabi and Ibn Taymiyyah and certainly Ibn Habib al-Maliki, as I said, who said, no, she does need to serve him bil ma'ruf, within reason. If he's going out to work, then she will cook. You know, he will come back and find a meal to eat, things of that nature. So many scholars from the different madhahib as well, within every madhab some scholars, but this is the authorized view of the madhahib, to be honest. But many scholars said it has to be reasonable division of burden, and the reasonable division of burden, they cited that the Prophet ﷺ divided the work. You know, the Malikis cite this in their book. It may not be hadithi-wise traceable, you know, authentically, but the Malikis often cite it in their books. And also we do know that Asma used to serve as Zubayr. We do know from the Sahaba radhiyallahu alayhim that women used to work at home, and that was the division. Why is it important that we mention that the authorized view in the four mazahib is that she does not need to serve him? Because how are we saying that she does need to serve him? What are we using? Reason. So if you're using reason, then don't overdo it. If your reason is the equitable division of burdens, then don't overdo it. Like for the working woman nowadays, she should not be responsible for all the housework, because that is not equitable division of burdens. That is not fair division of burdens. And if the theory that we are basing this on is equity, that is not equitable. That's inequitable. So the concept goes back to equitable division of burdens. And so, like if she will have to go out to work and she will be responsible for sustaining the family, and if they are doing it half and half, then they divide the work at home to half and half. That makes sense or not? You know, including the half and half, the division of half and half, and including child rearing, which he may not be able to do. Then he will have to compensate for that. So he will do more like washing, and because like if he's unable to breastfeed, then he will have to work to compensate. If they are sustaining the household half and half, then it makes perfect sense that they also sustain the work at home half and half, that they share it half and half. And if he's unable to breastfeed, then he'll need to make up laundry, washing the dishes, stuff. But if they decided to have a different type of arrangement, the basic philosophy here is what? Equity, fairness. If they decided that it will be 1 quarter and 3 quarters for maintaining, you know, financial sustenance, then flip it, 3 quarters and 1, etc. Just to maintain equity and to maintain fairness in the relationship so that no party burns out. I guess we're out of time, so inshallah next time we will talk about, and certainly if she's doing this, if the scholars were discussing whether she needs to serve her husband or not, then a fortiori serving his brothers and sisters and all of the, you know, the family members, a fortiori is not obligatory on her. And if she does show kindness to his parents, then he should show appreciation for that because it is not incumbent on her. And certainly we do want to encourage kindness to the elders in general, and if the elders are the parents of your husband, then certainly there are so many reasons now to show kindness to those particular elders, but he also should be appreciative because the contract of the marriage does not include this particular item. It's not part of the contract. A fortiori بالأولى قياس الأولى, the stronger argument. Yeah.